Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we prepare to take bold new action to protect our New York values. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize some of the special guests with us here today. First of all, our host, the Manny Cantor Center. Thank you for inviting us here today. And in the interest of full disclosure, I have about 2,000 names to read, so I'm going to make a suggestion. Why don't we hold the applause until we're all through, okay? Can you agree with that? Okay, don't break that rule, okay? Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, and from the New York State Senate, Marisol Alcantara, Brad Hoylman, Kevin Parker, Jose Serrano, and from the New York State Assembly, Harvey Epstein, Ari Espinal, Nathalia Fernandez, Richard Gottfried, Kimberly Jean-Pierre, Steve Otis, Rebecca Seawright, Joanne Simon, David Weprin, and Tremaine Wright. And we have with us our New York Public Advocate, Tish James, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, Queensborough President Melinda Katz, and New York City Council Member Margaret Chin. And from our advocacy side, Jill Ferrillo, the Executive Director of the New York State Nurses Association, Robin Chappelle Golston, President and CEO of the Planned Parenthood Empire State Acts, Vincent Russell from Planned Parenthood Hudson Peconic, Krista Christakis, Executive Director of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and all the advocates here today. And a special shout out to the steering committee members of the New York State Council on Women and Girls, and from the Governor's administration, Melissa DeRosa, Secretary to the Governor, Alfonso David, Counsel to the Governor, Maria Volod, Superintendent of the Department of Financial Services, Arlene Gonzalez-Sanchez, Commissioner, Office of Alcoholism, Substance and Abuse Services, Mara Manis, Executive Director for the New York State Council on the Arts, John Rhodes, Chair of the Public Service Commission, Sam Roberts, Commissioner of the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, and Howard Zucker, Commissioner, Department of Health. You did it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give them all a collective round of applause. In a few moments, you will hear from our fantastic public advocate, Tish James, and then you'll hear from Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez and the President of Planned Parenthood Empire State Acts, Robin Chappelle Golston. And then we look forward to hearing Governor Andrew Cuomo, who will then sign new regulations to protect the women of New York State. I don't need to tell you that these are particularly scary times in our nation. Over the last year and a half, we have watched as the progress we fought so hard for in New York State be threatened by this administration in Washington. And now, the Trump administration is poised to nominate a right-wing conservative extremist to the United States Supreme Court. And they could roll back Roe v. Wade and other advancements in reproductive health care. Well, that's the bad news. Fortunately, here in the state of New York, we have leaders who are standing up for our values and fighting for what's right. I'm proud to work for an administration that is fighting back. Governor Cuomo and I are not only protecting our progress from the federal government, but actually taking new action to strengthen reproductive rights in our own state. And we are joined by partners all across government and advocates, including those gathered here today. And we are together working as a united front against these assaults from our federal government. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me first in welcoming our incredible New York City Public Advocate, Tish James.
Our body, our choice. 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 And when our reproductive rights are under attack, what do, ladies? We stand up and we I'm so proud to be here with all of you from across New York to stand up for the rights of women, because now, more than ever, we need to focus on protecting reproductive health. And can you believe, here we are in 2018, and we're still fighting for the right to choose. We're still fighting for access to birth control. We're still fighting for privacy. We're still fighting and standing up for women. And the federal government constantly tries to push back against efforts to strengthen women's equality and diminish contraceptive law. And they don't believe a woman should be in control of her own body, and they want to take away her rights. And they don't believe in a woman's right to choose when she wants to have a family. And so we have here in the great state of New York a feminist who is prepared to protect the advancements that we have made to create a fairer and more equal society. And ladies and gentlemen, that feminist is Governor Andrew Cuomo. And that's why the policies and access we provide at the local level are so critically important, because it's really all about federalism. It's really all about states' rights at this point in time. We are on our own. And so today is a testament to New York's commitment to taking action to strengthen women's equality and fight for the rights of all New Yorkers. And so we want to thank Governor Cuomo for stepping up and fighting back. The state has always and always will lead the way on progressive issues. And I know that my fellow colleagues in government and others today will continue to shine a progressive beacon for the entire nation to follow. And so it's my honor and my duty to introduce to you a fierce and fabulous woman. She hails from a faraway place called Brooklyn. But she's also referred to in Brooklyn as La Luchadora. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez.
Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. And by the way, this is my district. Welcome into my district. It's great to be here. Thank you all for fighting the good fight. Today, I am reminded of the words of a great civil rights leader, Congressman John Lewis. He said that there are times that call for trouble, good trouble. Today is one of those days to cause trouble and send a strong message to Washington and the administration. So today we are standing together here in New York to stop this federal assault and take new action to expand reproductive rights in New York. And remind everyone that a room of men have no business undermining a woman's constitutional right to choose. And we settle our governor feminism by our Tish James. So that room with men is not referring to our governor. So now, more than ever, we must stand up, speak out, and take action. We cannot and we will not let the extreme conservative administration in Washington to roll back all that we have achieved. At a time when women's rights are under assault by the federal government and the federal judiciary, New York State must be a buffer to protect women's right to choose. So, under the governor's leadership, whatever Washington does, we know that women in New York State will have control of their own bodies. New York is standing true to its values and setting an example for this federal government, whether it's women's right to choose or protecting those most vulnerable among us, children. So thank you, Governor, for your leadership, and thank you to everyone here today for showing that New Yorkers will not sit silently by as Trump launches an attack on women and reproductive rights. Please join me now in welcoming a champion for women in New York, President of Planned Parenthood, Empire State Act, Robin Chappell Goldstone. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to see our state's leaders elevating the federal government's threats against reproductive health and justice. I know it can be disheartening to see so many of our values that we believe this country represents to be under attack. And now the probability of another Supreme Court justice on the bench that is conservative represents a dire threat to the progress we've made in this country. This is what we have all feared, and now we see it becoming a reality. Millions of New Yorkers face losing the fundamental right to control their own destinies and access safe, legal abortion. We no longer can rely on federal protections. That is why we are grateful for the leadership in New York that is stepping up for our constitutional right and fighting to protect and advance our reproductive rights. Governor Cuomo has continued to be a champion for women's equality and reproductive health. Earlier this year, New York passed several initiatives that improve the health, safety, and economic stability of women and girls, but we have more work to do. The governor understands that our state law should treat abortion like any other medical procedure, and that we must update New York state law to reflect Roe v. Wade. I have no doubt that he will fight to ensure that all New Yorkers have access to care and information that they need to make their own health care decisions. And so I want to thank the governor for his continued leadership. Governor Cuomo is sending a clear message that we're not going backwards. Whatever happens in Washington, we're going to continue to move forward. And so it's my pleasure to introduce the 56th governor of New York State, Governor Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are we ready to fight back? Are we ready to fight back? Are we ready to fight back? You know we are. Let's give a big round of applause to Robin Chappell Goldson and Planned Parenthood. Thank you. These great advocates up here, thank you. Smile. Our great Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, let's give her a round of applause. Thank her for her advocacy. Our great Congresswoman, whose district we are in, Nydia Velasquez. And our great public advocate, Tish James. Have a seat, have a seat. And all my colleagues from the legislature who have done great, great work in advancing the cause of women. Let's give them a round of applause. Tish James says I'm a feminist, and she's right. God told me I was a feminist when he gave me 3 daughters. My father was a feminist. God told him he was a feminist when he had 14 grandchildren. 13 girls out of 14 grandchildren. And I am proud. And I am proud that New York is a state of feminists, by the way. And it is time for us to take action. Kathy Hochul's exactly right. These are frightening and challenging times. What makes it worse is the threat comes from our own federal government. They are the ones who are creating the challenge and the threat. And the truth is, we have an extreme conservative philosophy in Washington that is trying to take over the country. The reporters say to me, "Why do you call them extreme conservatives?" I said, 2 reasons. 1, they're extreme. 2, they're conservative, hence extreme conservatives, which means they have very conservative ideology, but they're extremists because they want to take that ideology and impose it on us. They have their own view of what is the right lifestyle and what is the right religion and what an American should look like. And then they are then going to take that and impose it on us. They don't approve of the LGBTQ lifestyle, so they treat them like second-class citizens. They believe what religions are right and what religions are wrong, and they don't believe that Muslims follow the right religion, and they don't want them in this country. They have their own view of America and who should be Americans. If you listen to them, you would take down the Statue of Liberty. You would rewrite the poem of Emma Lazarus. What they are doing, separating children from their parents at the border, is inhumane, it is grotesque, it is illegal, it is un-American, and I am so proud this state has stood up and sued the federal government for what they're doing. They are pro-management and they're pro-rich. That's why they're against the middle class and the working families. That's why they had the Supreme Court decide the Janus decision, trying to end labor unions as we know them. It's labor unions that built the middle class, and we will stand with them and stand strong and stand proud. $154 mass shootings this year. 154. Many in schools, many children, but their gun obsession and their ownership by the NRA has caused them to fail to protect American innocence. New York stood up. We passed the best gun control law in the United States of America, the SAFE Act. Thank you, New York State Legislature. We came back this year, and we now take guns from perpetrators of domestic violence, saving lives. And one of the other things the federal government has done, literally from day one, has shown total disrespect to women. The disrespect they show is personal, it's professional, and it is governmental. You have the Me Too movement, where thousands of women had the courage to come forward, and the federal government has done nothing. The silence has been deafening. Not in New York State. We just passed the strongest anti-sexual harassment policy in the United States of America. But now it gets worse, because the real power in the presidency is the Supreme Court. Most actions, the president has to go through Congress. And there's opposition in Congress. You have to deal with great champions like Nydia Velázquez. But when it comes to the Supreme Court, you appoint the Supreme Court. If you have the Senate and they'll confirm your people, the power of the Supreme Court is absolute. And he knows this, and he has been using it. The Supreme Court has become a rubber stamp for this president. He did his anti-Muslim travel ban, they upheld it. They upheld his immigration policy. They upheld his anti-union policy with the Janus decision. And mark my words, they are moving to roll back Roe v. Wade. That is going to be the next move by this president. And by the way, they say it. It's not like you have to read the tea leaves. It's not like you have to have some great insight. They believe it. This is their view of the world. This is their view of religion. This is their view of what God says should be done. And their view of what God says should be done is the view they're going to impose on you by law. What a great act of hypocrisy. These are conservatives. Conservatives always argued limited government, remember? States' rights. Pull back the federal government. What do they know in Washington? Until they took control of the federal government. Then it was the exact opposite. Then the federal government is omniscient and omnipresent, and the federal government should dictate the law of the land to everyone, not in New York State. Roe v. Wade was 1973. 1973. They want to take us back to before 1973. Just think about it. They want to take us back to the dark days. Remember when the president during the campaign would say, "I want to make America great again." Again. It was all retrospective. It was that America was great at one time. And you know his time when it comes to women? Before 1973. Before Roe v. Wade, before women had the constitutional legal protection to control their own bodies. That's what he's saying, and that's what he's doing. And I'll tell you how absurd this is. We have been trying to pass a Reproductive Health Act in the state of New York. We have a Senate that is controlled by Republicans who drank the Trump Kool-Aid 100%. But one of the reasons they opposed it, they said, well, we have Roe v. Wade in law, and there's no way anybody would ever think of overturning Roe v. Wade. These were the Republican senators just a couple of years ago telling me it's unimaginable that anyone would try to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, they elected someone who wants to do the unimaginable, which is to take us back before 1973, to disrespect women, to disempower women. Unfortunately, there are states' rights too. Before there was a federal government, there were state governments, and states can protect themselves. And this is a fight. And this state is going to protect itself because this is the state that has always been the progressive capital of the nation. From day one, when it came to protecting labor rights, immigrant rights, it was always New York that stood up. It was New York that stood up and proclaimed women's rights before anyone else. Seneca Falls, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It was New York that stood up as one of the first states to say we have to protect a woman's reproductive health rights. 1970, we passed a law protecting a woman's right to have an abortion. Before Roe v. Wade, 1970. So, New York is going to lead the way once again. We have passed a New York version of Roe v. Wade. We need a New York state law that codifies Roe v. Wade. New York New York State never codified Roe v. Wade because we had Roe v. Wade. And it was unimaginable, as I mentioned, that it would ever be rolled back. We now need a New York State law codifying Roe v. Wade, which goes further and has more protections than our current state law. And we need a state law that takes it out of the criminal code, because that will frighten doctors and the medical community and women. I proposed the law. The state assembly has passed the law. We need the New York State. We need the New York State Senate to come back to Albany. The law is passed. It is sitting there by the Assembly. We need them to come back today and pass that law. And we need them to pass that law now, before the worst happens, before he gets his next Supreme Court justice, and before they overturn Roe v. Wade. And there's no ducking this issue. And I want to say clearly to the Senate Republicans, it's very simple. The bill is on your desk. You either come back and protect a woman's right to choose and respect a woman's reproductive health rights, or the voters of this state are going to say to you in November, you're with Trump, well, you're fired from the New York State Senate. And we're not going to wait or rely on the New York State Senate Republicans. I'm going to sign an executive order today that protects a woman's right to choose, protects a woman's right to contraceptive care. No insurance company can deny it, no bureaucracy can deny it, and no federal agency can deny it. Thank you. And my friends, my last point is this. Congresswoman Velasquez said, sometimes you have to make trouble. Good trouble. I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote you. It's your district, but it's my state. These are frightening times. These are challenging times. This is a nation struggling. This is a nation that is lost. This is a nation that is under attack from within. And the state of New York is not just another state, he says with New York arrogance. It is a state that has always led the way in times of trouble. And when the different political winds were blowing and people wanted to know what is the way forward, they looked to New York. And New York always pointed the way forward. This is not a time to allow these actions to happen sitting down. This is the time to fight back. This is the time to resist. This is the time to make your voice heard. This is the time where every New Yorker has to say, you're not taking a woman's right to reproductive health away. You're not going to separate families who come here and are our new immigrants. We're not going to allow you to end labor unions. We're not going to allow you to end the middle class and working family dreams. You're going to have to do it over our dead body, because we're not going to stop our progressive fight for this federal government. Let's sign the executive order. Congratulations, the order is signed.